Welcome to this Level Up with Learning Site series webinar for this evening. The topic today is Plan for Success. We're talking about planning using Learning Site. My name is Alexis. I'm a former Spanish teacher, and now I work with Wayside Publishing. I work with teachers. Amy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Amy Rill, and I am an instructional technologist here with Wayside, and I'm a former German and Spanish teacher, and I'm located in Maryland. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you. And Amy is watching that chat and working behind the scenes and keeping very busy. So please, if you have any questions, make sure you put them in that question box. We have a couple questions for you because we want to get to know you. So the first question is, which language do you teach? Amy's going to launch a poll in GoToWebinar, and you can submit your answer there. Which language do you teach?
Okay, it's looking like we've got French teachers today. Oh, and Spanish. There we go.
Yes.
I didn't scroll down far enough to see.
Yeah, so it looks like actually overwhelmingly Spanish, but some French. Oh, we got one German teacher. Nice. Yay. All right. Thank you. The next poll question is, which Wayside products do you and your students use? So Amy's going to launch another poll and GoToWebinar there. Pay attention to the edition when you're putting your answer in there, because we do have two different editions of Spanish and French. The 2025, 2027 are going to be the newer editions. All right, so it looks pretty even between the original editions and the newer editions. Some AP, a little bit of readers. All right, great. Thank you. That helps us as we're going through and as we're demoing. We'll try and hit all of the different languages and editions as we go through. And again, if you have a question, make sure to use that Q&A button to ask your question. Today, we're talking about planning. And one of the things that makes our products from Wayside Publishing special is that we design everything using backward design. So that means all of our units within our books follow this three-step process. The first step of backward design is to identify desired results. The second step is to determine assessment evidence. And then the third step is to plan learning experiences and instruction based on step 1 and 2. What does that look like in our materials? So for our first step, identifying desired results, every unit starts off with unit goals and essential questions posted on that unit opener spread. And we have can-do statements throughout each unit that are tied to the student portfolio, and they're tied to student success on those essential questions and unit goals. So everything will come back to those guiding pillars there with the unit goals and essential questions, and we'll look at where to find those in Learning Site in a few minutes here. Step 2 is determine assessment evidence. So we have several options for assessments across the series. So we have our summative integrated performance assessments, or IPAs. We also have formative assessments in each unit, and then we have alternate objective tests, which you will find in the resources tabs for whichever book you're teaching, and those are multiple choice assessments tied back to the unit goals. And then finally, we are ready to plan for learning experiences guided by those assessments and those unit goals and essential questions. And that will include things like the cultural unit opener for each unit, the vocabulary and grammar sections, workbook and new learning practice, and the critical learning pathways, which are featured in the newer editions. All right, so now we know where we're going. Let's dive right into Learning Site. So I'm going to toggle back and forth between the previous edition and the newer edition, but I'm going to actually start off with our new edition here. So if I go into Learning Materials, under Resources, there are lesson plans. And you'll notice for each unit, there's 50 and 90-minute lesson plans. These will give you an idea of how you could cover the content across 6 weeks, depending on how many classes you teach, whether you have 50 or 90 minutes. And what you'll notice here with these lesson plans is that they will start off with essential questions, they'll have suggested warm-ups, and then the meat of your lesson with these segments, and then additional activities. You'll also notice that this icon here, that's our critical learning path. So you'll notice this in the teacher edition of the textbook as well. Those will point out specific can-do statements that are tied to unit assessments. So this is one way if you're really short on time, or maybe you have multiple preps, you know, you're one of those lucky French teachers or German teachers that get to teach all 4 levels in the same day. These unit lesson plans can really save you a lot of time because they're basically, you can open it up and see what the suggested activities are for a specific day. So for example, in this day here, it's giving me my lesson plan, these activities to do, the page numbers that they're on, and then any type of teacher's notes that are going to be relevant for me, and then any suggested homework. These are Word documents. They'll open up as a Word document, so they're editable. If you don't have Word on your computer, then you can open them as a Google Doc and then edit them that way. So that's in the newer edition. Let's look in the previous edition. I'm going to go into French this time. With the previous editions, they will be in the resources folder, but they're going to be in the folder for teachers in both French and Spanish. And then you'll be able to find the lesson plan folder, and you'll see 50 or 90-minute lessons divided into 2 different folders here. Again, Word document, which is nice, you can edit. And you can take notes too. So if you know, teach from these lesson plans this year and want to open them up for next year, you can take notes in here of how it went, what you would change, anything like that. And again, very similar. You've got your objectives, opener, activities, closing, and homework or additional activities. So that's one place that we can start very easily to get going. All right, let's dive into a unit. I'm going to go back to my second edition here. And again, each unit is starting with those unit goals and essential questions. I really like teaching from the ebook. When I was teaching with our first edition of Spanish, if I right click here, this is another little hack. You can have 2 tabs open at the same time. So if I want to navigate between learning materials and the ebook, I can open that ebook in a separate tab. You don't have to do this. This is just one option if you like to project things as you're teaching. I'm going to use my table of contents here to navigate to my unit opener. So my unit opener is always going to have my goals and my essential questions over here. So this is a great place to go as you're beginning to teach a unit. These essential questions are also an activity that you could assign through Learning Site, and these are forum tasks. So forum tasks are like message boards where students can post multiple things and they can comment on each other's posts. You as the teacher can go in and monitor and comment or leave reactions on student posts. So in this case, it's asking them about these essential questions. So they can come in here and reflect on these essential questions. I like to do an activity called First Thought, Second Thought with these. With this activity, I would ask students these essential questions at the beginning of the unit so they could come in here and reflect before we even started the content. So they'd come in, leave their reactions, and then at the end of the unit, they can revisit those initial answers, respond to their own initial comment to see if their thoughts have changed at all throughout the unit. Or maybe another thing they could do is react to these questions in English at the beginning because they don't have the language yet, and then go in at the end of the unit and react in Spanish to see how much language they've learned between the beginning and the end of the unit. So this is one way to use a forum task. Remember, if you're in the student edition, you can go ahead and select that title. It'll pop that activity open on the site over here, and directly from here, I can assign to students if I decide I want to do that. So that's nice if, for example, I'm using this to teach in class. We're going over this spread on the first day of this unit, and I forgot to assign it, or I thought, oh, you know what, this would be a really good thing for us to do right now. You can instruct students to click on this with you. So if they've got it open on their end on their devices, they can select it and open it, or you can open it and then just assign so that it appears in their assignment calendar right there. All right, we're going to navigate over to my first edition to look at the same content. So in this case, it's called Flex Text instead of ebook because we are in that edition. And I can use my table of contents over here to navigate. Again, we've got our unit objectives and essential questions. To navigate to that forum task here in the first edition, I'm just going to select the compass and my activity will open right there. And then I can assign same thing forum task. It's going to have that message board for students to come down here and leave their thoughts. And I can assign here to create that assignment, or I can direct students. They can click with me to get here and we can all do it together. All right, I'm going to open my ebook for the new edition. Because with these can-do statements that will appear on several pages, remember this icon right here is referencing the critical learning path. So this is going to let me know which activities, again, this is for second edition, which activities are tied to those assessments and which activities are going to best prepare students to be successful later on. These can-do statements appear throughout. These are great lesson objectives. So if you're planning ahead and planning your lesson and need to list your unit objectives, you can use these. These are also great just check-ins for students along the way. After we've done these activities, ask them how are they feeling about these. You can also ask students to go in and reflect on their own portfolio. So students all have a portfolio that can be accessed in this left-hand side menu over here. I'm seeing the student work, so this is a little bit different view than what students are seeing when they log in. But I can see that this student has left progress on this one or this one. So this student says that she can do this with help, and then she's added a task. So she's reflected on this particular can-do statement. In the first edition, there are documents. So I went into resources and then I've got this, my progress, mon progrès documents that outline all of the can-do statements in a reflection tool like this. So these are PDFs. Students could go in here and type into these PDFs, or you could print these out so that students are able to reflect on the can-do statements as they go through the content. And then we have lists of these in the newer edition. I know some teachers really like to print these out and have students go in and reflect on a regular basis, or sometimes teachers even do like the old school stamps once students have demonstrated progress on these can-do statements. So that's kind of a fun way to help students keep track of their own learning. All right, so that's all the content for our first step. Amy, do we have any questions? Are we doing all right, or did I forget anything?
No, I think we are doing okay. There were some questions about that click path, so I put that in the chat to everyone, just showing how to get from either explore content or learning materials. You're going into that resources folder, and then taking you to either your teacher only resources folder, might need that step, and then getting you to the lesson plans. So that was pretty much the only thing that I noted here that people might want the review of.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, let's move on to our next step of backward design, which is determining assessment evidence. You have for each unit formative assessments and summative assessments. So I'm going to start with the second edition here and use my table of contents on the side. Our Vive entre culturas, or J'y arrive for French, are going to be, or Ziel erreicht for German, are going to be our summative assessments. So these are integrated performance assessments. And with backward design, this is really the place where we should start when we're looking at assessments. So I'm going to open that assessment. I'm looking at this from the Learning Materials tab, but it's also helpful to look at it from the textbook view, because if students are flipping through the textbook, this is what they're going to see as they're accessing that. And remember, you can have, I just popped open another tab here. I really like having both tabs open. It helps me navigate back and forth pretty quickly. So this is what it would look like in the physical textbook. So students can always read ahead and get an idea of what they're going to do. All the actual materials are going to be in Learning Site and hidden from students until you make them available. So it's fine for students to go in and get that idea of here's what I'm working towards, but just keep in mind that those materials are going to be hidden. All right, so each of these assessments is going to start off with a real world context. So in this case, a friend at your school grew up in Mexico. You want to make your friend feel at home by preparing an authentic Mexican dish along with some influences from your own culture, a fusion meal. So there's your context. The goals from the unit are going to be repeated. And then we have our rubric. Our rubric is another great place to start. And that might seem counterintuitive to some people, but I really like starting with the rubric as well, because not only am I going to be reading what the tasks are that students are going to do, so they're going to have interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational tasks, but this gives me an idea, the rubric gives me an idea of what a realistic expectation is for a student at which level. Now you decide which level is the goal for your students. You might feel like, oh, my class, I'm going to be really happy if they hit novice mid for this assessment, or you might be in a place where intermediate low is a really good goal for your assessment. It just depends on your circumstances and what your department has decided. And remember, you get to choose as well. There's a lot of autonomy in this. So let's say I've decided that novice high is going to be the goal for my class. We're at unit 4, second half of the school year. We've been doing really well in this unit, so I want them to perform at novice high. I can take this rubric and read the description here of what students are going to do and what it should look like for a novice high. This helps me a lot before I even get into teaching this unit. What is the goal at the end here? And for me, it's going to be that students understand and respond appropriately to most of the questions using words, phrases, a question in simple sentences. The message is often understood despite errors. So this is giving me a good compass or a good goal for that interpersonal speaking task. So remember to take a look at those rubrics. You can find those in learning materials. And again, we'll go into the older editions so you can see where they are found there as well. All right, so I'm going to look at my rubric. You could also look at the answers if you want to. This sample answers document is also fantastic. I'm going to open that. It's going to open as a Word doc. If you are new to giving IPAs, or if your students are new to taking IPAs, this can be really helpful, because sometimes when you're doing performance tasks like this, you don't really know what students are going to be able to do or what's a realistic expectation for your students. So these sample student answers are very helpful for that. I said earlier that I'm looking for novice high answers from my students. This particular task, it's the interpersonal task. They're doing a comparative recording where the computer is asking them questions and they're answering, and it's recording their answers. So it's basically going to turn in an audio file to me of my students' answers. So here's the script from the simulated conversation, the questions that they'll be asked. And then down here are some sample student answers based on level. So here's novice mid, here's potential student responses, novice high, and intermediate low. Notice there are errors in these student responses because we've got novice level students here. We're not expecting perfection. If I go back to my rubric and what I'm asking them to do, this is appropriate. And what's nice for me as a teacher is to set realistic expectations. And then after the assessment, I might open this document and show my students and say, here's what the expectation was. How do you think that compares to what you did? What kinds of things are you noticing about these responses for a novice high student? Do you think this is realistic for us? So this is a great conversation piece to have with students and maybe even parents if that is necessary. All right, so that's a sample answers document. And then we'll have our 3 tasks. So there's an interpretive task, an interpersonal, and a presentational. I can open these over here on the side. And remember, I can also read a description here in my ebook. So students are going to watch a video for their interpretive task and answer some questions. They're going to have that comparative recording for their interpersonal. And then for their presentational task, they're going to present a menu that they create. Notice there's can-do statements tied to each of these tasks. And then I am able to assign these tasks here. So because students are watching a video, I might decide that I want them to do this on the computer or not. It's up to you. So I can assign from here. This one, because it's a comparative recording, it's asking them questions and then they're recording their answers. I'm definitely going to want them to do this on the computer, so I would assign. And then their presentational task, they can either, it's written, so they could either do it here or it could create a handout for them. So that's my summative assessment. This is telling me towards the end of the unit, this is what students should be able to do based on the content from the unit. Now, let's say I've decided I want to print these out. I'm going to head up here to resources, and then I'm going to go over to assessment program. So again, resources, assessment program. This Viva Entre Culturas folder, or GRI folder, or Ziel erreicht folder, is going to give you all of the contents in a printable format, whether that's the rubric, sample answers, or just the assessment itself. So this is going to be the really nice, beautiful, colorful, printable versions of these assessments. While I'm here, I'm going to go back to my assessment program. Again, I'm in resources, assessment program. There's a folder of alternate objective tests. This is going to be those multiple choice assessments. So you'll notice I've got vocabulary tasks here, grammar tasks, and in a multiple choice format, divided by comunicación. Fill in the blank, matching. So if you need a alternate assessment for whatever reason, whether it's a practice test, makeup test, maybe you have a student that has an accommodation that they can't be doing that integrated performance assessment for whatever reason, this is a great alternative, and you can assign these directly from Learning Site. You're also able to, let me go back into the task, I can assign from here. I can also print these out from this menu as well. Okay, I'm going to go back to my unit. So we were looking at the Viva Entre Culturas or GRI or Ziel erreicht summative assessments, but I'm going to go back into my first communication section here and look at my formative assessment. You're going to have 3 formative assessments per unit. For Spanish, in camino. For French, j'arrive. J'avance, sorry, j'avance. And for German, Amy's going to have to remind me.
Unterwegs.
Thank you, unterwegs for German. Thanks, Amy. Okay, so same thing. We're going to, or very similar, we're going to have 3 tasks, 1 in each mode of communication. We've got our rubric here, our answer doc. Something different about these tasks is that they're differentiated. So you have 3 versions for each task. And for this Spanish example, you could choose to assign a novice mid, a novice high, or an intermediate low, depending on your student. When you go to the printable versions in the resource folder, you'll be able to print all 3 versions as well, and they'll be labeled at the top with which versions they are. So very similar to those summative assessments, they're just kind of a slightly shorter version, so the students are getting that practice in the performance tasks. All right, Amy, any questions so far? I need to go into first edition and show there, but how are we doing?
We do not have any additional questions to address.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to head into Entre Culture 1 in the first edition, and we're going to take a look at our assessments there. So again, if you choose to go out of flex text, that's a great place to be. You'll notice the J'y arrive summative assessments. Very similar. We've got our essential questions, our context, and then interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational tasks. From here, I can use the compass to select the different pieces of the assessment, or I can even just assign from here. So that's one way to access all of this content, is again through that flex text. You can also go in through Explorer Content, select the unit, and then select the folder, and all of the contents will be there. For first edition, I actually prefer to go, personally, I prefer to go in through this Explore content because everything's going to be here in this one folder for me. The rubric will always be posted first. So same thing, you're going to have that rubric with the different tasks on the side and modes of communication, and then the proficiency levels across the top. And then you'll have one PDF document with all of the tasks in it. So in terms of backward design planning as a teacher, I would print this whole thing out, sit down and take the assessment before I even start the unit. So that way I know what students are going to be expected to do towards the end. So I see that students are going to watch some videos, fill in some questions about it. Then they're going to be writing an email. And then they're going to be presenting themselves in a video blog. Just like with the first or the second edition, you can assign these tasks in Learning Site, or you can print them out and have students complete everything on pencil and paper, or you can mix and match. So for example, with this document, the email, I might actually have them handwrite it. I might print this out and have them handwrite it. But then for this one, they're supposed to be creating a video blog. So I might assign this presentational task in Learning Site. So that way they're actually going in and recording directly into Learning Site, and I don't have to worry about them recording somewhere else. So I can just assign, I already have it assigned, but I can go to assign and assign it to my students from there. Very similarly, so our presentational tasks, or sorry, our summative assessment, the J'y arrive, we're going to have one of those at the end of each unit, same with the Viva Entre Culturas. For the formatives, the J'avance or the In Camino, those will be embedded within the unit. And same thing, these are great check-ins along the way. Make sure that students have everything that they need, know what they're doing. I can select that title and find everything in the folder here, or I can access from the flex text and go into that assessment and get an idea of the different tasks. So there will be tasks for all the different modes for these assessments. Something else you can do when we're talking about backward design is I can see that I have 3 J'avance formatives and then 1 J'y arrive summative. When I'm planning out my entire unit, I can decide this is the date I want to give that summative J'y arrive or the Viva Entre Culturas. I can put that on my calendar and then plan backwards from there and plan out when I'm going to do these 3 formative J'avance or In Camino assessments. The units are designed so there's 6 per level, and if you're going to do all 6 in a year, then it would be about 6 weeks per unit. So you could go through and put those summative assessments on your calendar about 6 weeks apart, and then the formatives within that 6 weeks, and kind of calendarize your year and give yourself a little space and time for wiggle room, because we all know things change at the last minute. Okay. Any questions or anything we need to repeat, or are we moving on?
I had 2 questions. One was a question, can you show one more time how to get to the formative assessments? I think the participant did find the answer, but just want to make sure that everyone's able to see how to get to those formative assessments.
Sure. So I'll go in both editions. For the newer edition, I can use my table of contents over here on the side. You're going to have 3 communication sections. This applies for all 3 languages. And then I would just open that up. And at the end of the communication section, you're going to have your formative assessment. You can also use the ebook. And I can open my table of contents over here, find my communication section, and then move through there to find my formative at the end of this communication section. And menu's not opening all the way. Oh, there it was. I went too fast. All right, so this is one way to find it. And if you haven't noticed this yet, this is kind of a new update with our newer edition. If you're in the student ebook, you can select any of these titles and it will pop that activity open over here on the side.
If you are using an LMS integration, sometimes this does not work. So you would have to do this only inside Learning Site. So if you're using, say, Canvas LTI 1.3 integration or the Schoology LTI 1.3 integration, it will show you the ebook, but those links will not open into the tasks themselves because that is linked through your LMS, not through the ebook. So in case you see an error message and it's not popping up inside your ebook, that is what's supposed to happen inside your integration. So just to give you that little disclaimer. Can you also select the action button for me in there? There was also a question about how do you see the answer keys to activities? So inside that actions button, yep, you can go inside there and it will you can show the answers, so you can preview what is there. In this case, depending on what the task is, it might not give you any answers because it might be a something that doesn't have only one right or a wrong answer. But that's where you would go to find it. I don't know if you want to find one of those, maybe a matching task activity, something back in earlier in the comunicación section.
Put me on the spot.
Or sorry, just I would say go back to or inside the workbook. Workbooks always have those matching activities to find. So if you select that actions button, then you're able to preview the task and it'll show you those answers. And then to go back in to hide them, then you would just select again.
Yeah, so preview task is like the teacher view and then attempt task is like the student view.
Yep. And only you have this view. Your students don't have that button. So if you want to see what it looks like for your students, you can toggle that student view button at the top. And then it'll show you what your students see. And you can see they have no choices to see, any of those answers. So hopefully I answered your question in the chat. And I think that is it for right now. Oops, wait, we have another one. Yep, we got a thank you. Yes. Wonderful.
Okay, good. And just a recap too, to find the assessments in the first edition. So I'll start with the flex text. You can use your table of contents over here on the side. The J'avance or the En Camino are going to be your formatives, and you can use the compasses to open up any of the materials. You can also navigate through the Explorer content folder, select the unit, and then the J'avance folder, and that will give you all the materials. Okay. Well, then we're going to come to our third step of backward design, which is planning learning experiences and instruction. So I'm going to head back to my new edition first. And if I open the table of contents over here, so I'm in learning materials, if I open the contents here for this unit, it really nicely lays out for me all of the different pieces of the unit. So I've got this cultural opener, my 3 communication sections, the global community section, my summatives, and then my review pages. And if I've got my summative assessment on the calendar, and then I've got my 3 formatives on the calendar, that gives me a good structure to put in all of the other content. Typically, I'm going to start each unit with my cultural opener. So I can select these activities to open the content over here, and then use it as I go through and teach. I also think that having the ebook and planning from the ebook, because the student edition allows you to select the title of the activity and open the activity on the side, it's totally fair to just plan out of the textbook edition or the ebook. You don't necessarily have to go to learning materials if you don't want to. it really depends, I think, on what kind of view is easiest for you to access. So now I'm ready to dive into my activities, and I can go through and do the activities as they're listed in the book, or you can go through and pick and choose what you think is the most engaging. And using those critical learning path icons in the teacher edition in that wrap around the page will help you prioritize activities. There's so much content in the book, which is fantastic because you have so much to pull from and so much engaging content, but it's not always guaranteed that you're going to get through everything in the allotted amount of time. So picking activities that are going to lead to student success is going to be the most important thing. One of the things we talk about frequently is creating a system for yourself. And you could use like a stoplight analogy where you say, red, these activities you absolutely must do because they are critical for students to be successful on the assessment. Yellow could be, these are great to do if we have the time. And then green might be, these are fine if we have extra time, throughout the unit. So that might help you if you go through and kind of even just use good old-fashioned sticky notes and put them on your print page to leave yourself notes about what you want to prioritize as you go through. The other thing is, if I look at a vocabulary section, for example, like this one, where we're introducing vocabulary, we've got our activities here in the book. So there's several. So let's see, we started at activity 7, and then we've got 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got 7 through 12 for that one vocabulary section. I already know in the back of my head, because I've looked at the summative and I've looked at the formative, I know what those assessments look like. So if I don't have time to do all 5 activities, I'm going to prioritize the ones that are the most similar to the tasks on the assessment, because I know those assessments are tied to the unit goals and they're going to lead to the most success for my students. The other thing I might prioritize, and again, it's all personal preference, another thing I might prioritize are the authentic resources. So each language for the second edition has these authentic resource banners that will tell you, hey, this is an authentic resource right here. These tend to be really engaging for students because students like to see how language is used in the real world. So I might go through and I might prioritize these. This particular unit has several. I highly recommend as well, while you're planning and making these decisions, to use your teacher's edition and using the notes around the outside to help you make those decisions. Because again, this icon with the critical learning path is a good indicator, but you also have teaching tips for how to present vocabulary, how to decipher different activities, and those will be very helpful and take a lot of the work off your plate. We all are very busy. Teachers are the most busy people that I know. You're balancing a million things at once, and the more things you can do to help yourself, the better. And I think that having these notes in the teacher wrap is going to be really beneficial for you. Also, take note at the bottom here, these strategies for differentiation. So there'll be notes for how to scaffold, how to challenge students, supporting heritage learners, AP strategies, and they differ per page based on whatever the content is for that particular page. All right, let's head back to the first edition. So here I am in the flex text. And I just wanted to point out that there's also teacher notes here in the first edition. They're just embedded into the flex text. So you'll see these pink instructional notes as you're scrolling through the content. And this will give you ideas for how to teach as well. So in addition to the activities that are in the textbook, keep in mind that you do have your instructional strategies toolkit over here on the side. So I just expanded this left-hand menu. I'm going to open this instructional strategies toolkit. There's a bank of over 200 teaching ideas here that you can filter with these different categories. So for example, if I'm going to do an interpersonal task with my students, we're going to be speaking, and I've got mostly novice students, I can narrow down the results, and then I can open up any of these tasks, and it'll give me a description of how I can use this. So I really like this. When I was teaching the 2020-2021 school year, and I had some kids in the classroom and some kids at home, and I was feeling very burnt out and overwhelmed, I like just scrolling through here and picking a random activity or a couple random activities, and then seeing how I could apply that to what we were doing in class. Not that that was necessarily the best instructional strategy, but it mixed it up for me, and it kind of made things interesting because it brought in new ideas to my classroom. Many of these activities are things that you may have seen at a workshop or at a conference at some point in time, and maybe you forgot about it. Several of them come from the AP CED. So again, just overall good instructional strategies to help you as you're trying to try new things or attempting new things in your classroom. On top of what you have available for your book, so whether that's the text and the workbook, or in many cases a reader, so you have lots of things to do throughout the unit using those things, but you also have Newlang. So I'm going to select my Newlang here, and it's going to pop me out into my Newlang platform. And I'll have additional practice for each communication section here in Newlang. So, and this applies for first edition as well. You have new access to Newlang. Here, students are going to be able to get individualized practice that they can do at their own pace. So they can do these activities as many times as they want. They're going to get immediate feedback on every answer that they submit. So it's just a good, safe way for students to reinforce what they've been learning. They have their translation, listening, and pronunciation tasks for each communication section. They have these scenario role plays, so they can go in and participate in this pre-written interpersonal conversation, and then they can practice the conversation on their own with these chatbots. The phrase list will give them the phrases that have been pulled from the vocabulary section, and then the exercises are built around those phrases. You can create an assignment in Newlang. So if I'm in my classroom here in Newlang, I can select assignments and then create assignment. And it'll ask me to add exercises. So I can just choose, okay, this is the unit we were in. I can choose all of the activities from that unit or maybe just a couple. And then I can create assign dates and due dates. This will not show up in their learning site assignment list. This is only going to be in their Newlang assignment list. While you're planning throughout the unit, you could also plan to assign a discussion. Here, students will get into groups and have a discussion that will be recorded in Newlang. So they'll all log in on their own devices at the same time and have the discussion there. So I can add a discussion topic and a discussion prompt, and then create groups and give them an allotted time. So we'll look at an example here. Oops. I was going to look at my, there we go. So here I've got a discussion topic, a prompt, and then I've assigned a conversation for 3 minutes, and then I can create groups. So now these students are going to log in at the same time and have the discussion. And after they have that discussion, it is going to send me a recording and generate a transcript for that discussion. So then I can go in and leave feedback from there, or I could even have AI leave feedback for these students. So I've got my video over here in my transcript, and then I can select generate feedback, and it'll create feedback for these students. So again, this is discuss within Newlang. Lastly, in Duolang, I can create a play live game. So I can select the unit that we've been working on and then choose a translation, listening, or scenario game. I'm going to choose a listening game. So now, right in the moment, this is creating a game for me. I don't have to do any other work. I can do this the last 5 minutes of the period, get an idea of how students are doing with the content. So now students can log in on their own platform. They'll show up here. And then when I select start, my computer will say a word or phrase, and then students will go in and enter their responses, either typing or word bank, depending on how I have my settings for this game. So just a couple of things to spice your lesson up, or mix things up, or just supplement all of the content that's already in the textbook. All right, we're coming to the end of our time here. Amy, did we have any other questions or anything else we should talk about?
Yes, actually, can you show how to assign multiple tasks at one time? For example, if you wanted to assign all 3 portions of a formative assessment, how would you do that?
Oh, sure. Great question. I'm going to go into assignments here, and I'm going to go to add assignment. And let's say we were in unit 4 and communication 1. And I'm going to go to my in camino. That was my formative assessment. So see, I've got 3 sections here. I've got 22.1, 22.2, and 22.3. I can select all of those. I can even select the can-do statement. So you remember when students went into their portfolio and updated their progress. Let's say after they finish this assessment, I want them to go in and do that in their portfolio too. So I can select all of those. Now I can go in and pick my class, and then I can assign all of these activities at once. So, and then I decide if I want them in my grade book, if I want them to see their responses, all of the wonderful assignment options that we always have. I always remember, pick a due date. You can change your due date later, but always pick a due date. Yes. And now with our new dashboard, you can add assignments right here from the expandable menu in dashboard. Great question. What's next?
I believe that is all.
Oh, okay, great. Well, thank you. A couple reminders before you go. Hopefully this was helpful for you today. You have a friend down here in the bottom right corner of your screen. That friend's name is Can Do. And if you select Can Do has lots of tips for you in this menu here, including a full product training guide, user guides, instructional tours, all kinds of stuff. So be sure to check out Can Do. Also, in your bottom left corner, you have this question mark button. You can always find support by selecting that question mark button in the bottom left corner.
And we also had some questions about some feedback. If you wanted to give your feedback, select that button there on the help menu. And then you can leave content related feedback, functionality related feedback, anything that you want our Learning Site team to know about features, current features, or desired enhancements. Put it in there. Let us know.
All right. Thank you so much for being here this evening. We have a couple things for you still. So the first one is that we would love your feedback. The more feedback you leave us, the better we can make these sessions. So you can either scan a QR code or select the link that Amy's putting in the chat. It's just couple very quick question survey. That would help us out a lot. The next thing we have for you is a certificate of participation. So you do get proof that you had 1 hour of professional development this afternoon or evening. And if you select that QR code or put the link in the chat, or select the link that Amy's putting in the chat, it will bring up a form. Once you fill out a form, we will email you a certificate. Please allow 24 hours for the certificate to arrive to you. If you don't see it, be sure to check your spam folder. And if you still don't see it, you can let us know. We have another session coming up on April 13th about how to assign assignments and assess students using Learning Site and all of our wonderful programs. Be sure to join us on April 13th. Thank you so much for joining us. It has been a pleasure to talk Learning Site with you and all of our materials. Again, please reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much and have a great evening, everybody. Take care.